I'll never forget the night of my wife's company party. From the moment we walked into the hotel ballroom, I could feel the tension buzzing in the air, though I couldn't quite explain why. Maybe it was the way some of her coworkers glanced at me, measuring me up as though I were some outsider invading their little circle. Or maybe it was just the way my wife clung to my arm a little tighter than usual, whispering in my ear to just be polite. I had promised her I would. After all, this night was supposed to be about her. She'd worked hard all year, earning recognition, respect, and even a few envious stares from the people who couldn't keep up with her. Tonight was her chance to shine, and I wasn't going to let anything ruin it. But then he showed up. His name was Ethan. At least, that's what I caught from the introductions, though I'd already pegged him for trouble before he even opened his mouth. He had that smug kind of smile, the type of grin a man wears when he thinks he's the smartest person in the room. He was younger than me, probably mid-30s, slick hair, expensive suit, and an attitude that screamed wannabe alpha. From the moment he saw me, he decided I was his target. I don't know if it was jealousy, insecurity, or just his natural need to provoke, but every chance he got, he made some sly remark. At first, I brushed it off. A comment about my tie being a little old-fashioned. A joke about how I probably didn't understand what it was like to work in a real high-pressure environment. I let it slide. I told myself he was nothing more than a mosquito buzzing around my ear. Annoying, but harmless. But then he crossed the line. We were standing near the bar, my wife introducing me to a few colleagues, when Ethan decided to pipe up again. He leaned in with that same smirk and said loud enough for everyone to hear. "So, how does it feel being the plus one tonight? Must be nice having your wife take care of the big career moves while you, well, do whatever it is you do." The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was enough. A few nervous chuckles, a couple of awkward glances, and suddenly, all eyes were on me. My wife's face went pale. She gripped my hand tightly, as if begging me not to make a scene. And maybe if it had stopped there, I would have walked away. Maybe I would have let Ethan stew in his own arrogance, chalking him up as nothing more than another insecure man trying to score points at someone else's expense. But he didn't stop. He leaned even closer, voice dropping into that condescending tone people use when they think they're untouchable. I mean, come on. You must get tired of living in her shadow. Doesn't it bother you? Knowing she's the one everyone here respects, while you're just her husband? That was it. The room blurred around me. My heart slowed, my vision sharpened, and in that moment, it wasn't just about him mocking me. It was about him disrespecting my wife. He wasn't trying to insult me. He was trying to embarrass her, to make her regret bringing me here, to tarnish her night. And that, I couldn't allow. I straightened my shoulders, took a step toward him, and let my voice cut through the noise of the party. Calm, controlled, deadly serious. You really don't know who you're dealing with, do you? The smirk on his face faltered just slightly, just enough for me to know I'd hit the right nerve. Around us, the chatter dimmed. People turned, curious to see how this would unfold. My wife tugged at my sleeve, whispering my name, but I didn't take my eyes off him. Because in that moment, the game had changed. Ethan thought he was picking a fight with some ordinary man. But he had no idea, no clue. And I was about to show him exactly why you don't provoke someone like me. The moment I said those words, the atmosphere shifted. It was subtle at first. The low hum of conversations died down, the clinking of glasses from the bar slowed, and a dozen pairs of curious eyes fixed on us. My wife, Claire, gripped my arm tighter than ever, her nails digging into my sleeve as if she could anchor me back into silence. But it was too late. Ethan froze for just a second. Then, like any man who thrives on attention, he let out a forced laugh, loud and hollow. "Oh, come on," he said, waving a hand dismissively. "Don't take it personally. I'm just messing around. You can handle a joke, right?" But his eyes betrayed him. Behind that smug grin, I saw the flicker of unease. He had expected me to laugh it off, to bow my head, to let him play king in his little court of coworkers. Instead, I'd met his jab head-on. I took a step closer. Not aggressive, not threatening, just enough so that he had to tilt his chin up slightly to keep eye contact. "You think this is a joke?" I asked, my voice low but sharp enough to slice through the tension. The people around us shifted uncomfortably. A woman in a navy dress muttered something about getting another drink and slipped away. A couple of guys in suits exchanged glances, clearly debating whether they should step in or let things play out. Ethan tried to maintain his composure. Hey, relax. No harm done. I was just saying that I'm just my wife's plus one. I interrupted, tilting my head slightly. That I don't belong here? He smirked again, though this time it looked forced. Well, if the shoe fits. Claire tugged at me again. Please, she whispered under her breath. Don't make a scene. He's not worth it. But she didn't understand. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about respect. And Ethan, in front of all her colleagues, had crossed a line that couldn't be ignored. I smiled faintly, not the kind of smile that comes from humor, but the kind that signals danger. Ethan, I said evenly, you don't know me. You don't know what I do, what I've seen, or what I'm capable of. But you decided to provoke me anyway. That was your first mistake. A ripple moved through the crowd. Someone whispered, what does he mean by that? Another voice muttered, maybe he should back off. But Ethan, blinded by pride, leaned in closer, trying to reclaim control. And what exactly are you capable of? He asked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. You going to teach me a lesson in front of everyone? That was his second mistake. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't puff out my chest or throw my fists. Instead, I spoke calmly, almost conversationally, as though we were the only two people in the room. You want to know what I'm capable of? Let me give you a hint. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. With a few swipes, I opened a folder. It wasn't random photos or meaningless files. It was evidence. Documents, contracts, screenshots, a carefully built arsenal I'd compiled over years of work. Work Ethan had no idea I was involved in. I turned the screen just enough for him to see. His eyes darted down, and in that instant, his smirk vanished. He recognized something, a logo, a name, maybe even a number, something that told him this wasn't just empty bravado. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. What is this? He muttered, voice lower now. I leaned in, my words for him alone. This is me giving you a chance to stop. Walk away, keep your mouth shut, and this ends here. Keep pushing, and I promise you, you'll regret ever crossing me. He froze, caught between arrogance and fear. Around us, the silence deepened, the tension pulling tighter like a rope about to snap. Claire stared at me wide-eyed, torn between relief and dread, while Ethan's colleagues watched with morbid fascination, waiting to see if their golden boy would finally get humbled. For the first time all night, Ethan didn't have a comeback. His lips parted as if to speak, then closed again. He shifted his weight, his confidence draining out of him like air from a punctured balloon. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, straightened my jacket, and gave him one last look. Calm, steady, final. Choose wisely, I said. And then I turned, guiding Claire toward the dance floor, leaving Ethan standing there pale-faced and silent, his audience no longer impressed, but quietly whispering about the man who had just put him in his place. The party went on, music filling the room again, glasses clinking, laughter returning. But Ethan stayed quiet the rest of the night. And I knew, deep down, this wasn't over. For a while, it seemed like the night had finally settled down. Claire and I danced, mingled, and even shared a quiet toast with a couple of her more respectful colleagues. On the surface, everything looked normal again, but beneath it all, I could feel the undercurrent of unease. The whispers hadn't stopped, they'd just shifted. Ethan stayed quiet, but I caught him watching me from across the room more than once. His drink barely left his hand, and every so often, one of his buddies would lean in, whisper something, and glance my way. He didn't look smug anymore. No, he looked restless, like a man whose pride had been cracked in front of the very people he wanted to impress. And a man like Ethan? He wasn't going to let that go. Claire tried to pretend nothing had happened. She kept a smile plastered on her face, chatting with her boss, congratulating teammates, but I could feel her tension. Every time I squeezed her hand reassuringly, she squeezed back just a little too tight. She knew, as I did, that Ethan wasn't done. Sure enough, the storm broke just as dessert was being served. I was at our table, sipping coffee, when I heard him behind me. That voice, too loud, too theatrical, cutting through the chatter like a knife. You know what's funny? Ethan announced, clearly addressing his little circle, but making sure the words carried. Some guys come to these parties and act like they're above everyone else. Like they've got some big secret. But in reality, they're just hiding the fact that they're nobodies. I didn't turn. Not yet. I let him dig his own grave. He continued, his tone mocking. smugness returning in shaky waves. I mean, come on. Pulling out a phone, trying to scare people with what? PowerPoint slides? Screenshots? That's not strength. That's desperation. A few chuckles rippled from his corner. He thrived on that. Validation, even from nervous laughter. Claire stiffened beside me. Please, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Just let it go. He's drunk. He's making a fool of himself. But I wasn't worried about Ethan making a fool of himself. I was worried about him dragging her reputation down with him. He wasn't just trying to humiliate me anymore. He was trying to discredit her choice in bringing me here, make her look foolish in front of her colleagues. That I couldn't allow. I stood slowly, letting my chair scrape against the polished floor. The sound was enough to draw attention. Conversations quieted again, and a few heads turned in anticipation. Ethan's eyes lit up when he saw me rise. He mistook it for victory, as though he'd baited me into losing control. He smirked, lifted his glass, and said, "Ah, here he comes. The mysterious husband. Let's hear it. Enlighten us all. Tell us who you really are." I walked toward him with measured steps. Not rushed, not aggressive, just deliberate. When I stopped in front of him, the room was silent. You could have heard the ice clinking in the bar glasses across the hall. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "You want to know who I am?" He tilted his head, smug grin spreading wider. "Yeah, show us." I leaned in, lowering my voice so only he and the people closest could hear. "I'm the man who makes sure arrogant little suits like you never see the top floor. The kind of man who knows exactly which strings to pull and whose careers can disappear overnight. You think tonight is about me embarrassing you? No. Tonight is about you proving in front of everyone that you don't know when to stop talking." His smirk faltered again, and the tension in his jaw betrayed the panic he tried to hide. Around us, people exchanged uneasy glances. They didn't know what I meant, but Ethan did. He knew enough. I straightened, speaking louder this time, for everyone to hear. Respect isn't earned by mocking others. It's earned by knowing when to hold your tongue. Maybe you'll learn that someday. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. No one laughed. No one clapped. They just stared at Ethan, who now looked like he'd been stripped of every ounce of charm he thought he had. I turned and walked back to Claire, who exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. "We should go," she whispered. And we did. We left that ballroom with heads turning, whispers following us out the door. But as we stepped into the cool night air, I knew this wasn't finished. A man like Ethan wouldn't let the humiliation end there. He'd want payback. He'd try something stupid. And when he did, I'd be ready. The cold night air felt sharp against my skin as Claire and I stepped out of the hotel. She held my arm, her heels clicking quickly across the pavement, as though she could outrun the tension that still clung to us. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. The muffled music and laughter from the ballroom faded behind us, but the weight of what had happened lingered. Finally, she broke the silence. "You shouldn't have said those things," she whispered. Her tone wasn't angry, more frightened than anything else. "Ethan is connected. He has influence at the company. People listen to him." I stopped walking, turning to face her. "And you think letting him humiliate me in front of everyone would have been better?" Her eyes darted away. "I think walking away would have been safer." Safer. That word sat heavy in my chest. Claire didn't understand. Walking away would have made me look weak, yes, but more importantly, it would have made her look weak. Ethan's insults weren't aimed only at me. They were aimed at her too. He wanted to undermine her judgment, her authority. If I'd let him, she would have been the one people doubted on Monday morning. We got into the car, the silence stretching between us. As I drove through the city lights, I replayed Ethan's expression in my mind. That forced smirk, the twitch in his jaw, the way his eyes had betrayed his nerves. He was rattled, but not broken. Men like him didn't just crawl away after one bad night. They regrouped, schemed, came back harder. And sure enough, Monday proved me right. When Claire came home from work that evening, I could see the storm in her eyes before she even set her bag down. She sank into the couch, covering her face with her hands. "What happened?" I asked. She hesitated, then sighed. "He's spreading rumors. He told people you threatened him. That you..." She lowered her hands and looked at me with worry. "That you implied you could ruin his career. He's twisting everything to make you look like some thug." I let out a humorless laugh. "That's the best he's got. It doesn't matter if it's true," she said sharply. "What matters is that people believe him." My boss pulled me into his office today to ask if everything was all right at home. Do you know how humiliating that was? Her voice cracked, and I felt the anger stir in my chest again. But this time, it wasn't at Ethan's words. It was at the damage he was trying to cause Claire. He wasn't just playing office politics anymore. He was dragging her personal life into it. I sat beside her, placing a hand on hers. Listen to me. This ends when I say it ends. You don't need to fight this battle. That's my job. She searched my face, conflicted. And what does that mean? It means Ethan doesn't get the final word. He had his fun on Friday. Now he's trying to save face by turning people against us. But he doesn't know who he's up against. She frowned. And who exactly is he up against? I leaned back, my gaze fixed on the window, the city glowing in the distance. A man who doesn't forget. A man who doesn't forgive easily. And a man who's very, very good at making sure arrogant little cowards learn their place. Her silence told me she wanted to argue but didn't have the strength. Instead, she simply whispered, "Please don't make things worse." I gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "I won't. I'll make them better." But inside, I was already planning. Ethan thought he'd humiliated me at that party. He thought he could tarnish Claire's reputation with whispers and lies. What he didn't realize was that I'd spent years building connections, collecting information, and learning exactly how to handle men like him. By the time I was finished, Ethan wouldn't just regret provoking me. He'd regret ever stepping foot in that company. The next morning, I woke up early, long before Claire stirred. She needed rest. I needed clarity. Sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, I mapped out everything I knew about Ethan. Every detail mattered. He wasn't just some random coworker trying to look tough at a party. He was ambitious, cutthroat, and desperate to climb the corporate ladder. Men like him lived on reputation, on perception. Take that away, and their entire foundation crumbled. I pulled out my laptop and started digging. A name like his wasn't hard to trace. Within an hour, I had pieced together fragments, social media profiles, public records, old articles from college. The kind of information he probably thought was buried deep enough no one would bother finding. And then I found it. A lawsuit settled quietly 5 years ago. It was buried in local court archives, nothing major, but enough to raise questions if it came to light. Ethan had been accused of breaching a contract, and while he'd managed to settle without admitting guilt, the details were messy. It painted him as reckless, careless with obligations, willing to cut corners when it suited him. I leaned back, satisfied. I didn't even need to fabricate anything. The truth, in the right hands, would be more than enough. By the time Claire came downstairs, I had closed everything and was sipping my second cup of coffee. She smiled weakly, clearly exhausted, and sat across from me. "Rough night?" I asked gently. She nodded. "I barely slept. I keep thinking about what you said last night, about not forgiving or forgetting. It scares me, the way you sounded." I reached for her hand. "Don't be scared of me. Be scared for him." Her eyes searched mine, but she said nothing. She didn't have to. That afternoon, I made my first move. I didn't storm into Ethan's office or confront him in public. That would have been too easy, too obvious. Instead, I sent a simple email, anonymous, untraceable. Just a single link to that old court record, forwarded to his department head and 2 senior managers. No commentary, no threats, just facts. By evening, the reaction had already begun. Claire walked through the door with wide eyes, dropping her bag onto the couch. "What did you do?" she demanded. I raised an eyebrow. "Why do you assume it was me?" "Because this morning everyone was whispering about you." By lunch, everyone was whispering about him. His past, the lawsuit, the settlement. Nobody knows where it came from, but it spread like wildfire. She lowered her voice. "My boss called him in for a closed-door meeting. He came out looking like he'd been chewed up and spit out." I allowed myself the faintest smile. Sounds like karma caught up to him. Claire stared at me, her expression torn between relief and fear. "You can't keep doing this," she whispered. "If they ever trace it back to you." "They won't," I interrupted firmly. "I know how to cover my tracks." She shook her head, sitting heavily beside me. "This isn't you. At least, not the you I thought I knew." I didn't answer right away. She was right, in a way. This side of me wasn't the man who mowed the lawn on Saturdays or fixed the squeaky door hinge. This was the side forged from years of learning how the world really worked, how men like Ethan operated, and how to dismantle them before they caused real harm. I leaned closer, speaking softly. Claire, listen. Ethan isn't going to stop until he feels like he's won. That means he'll keep trying to use me against you, to make you look weak by association. I won't let that happen. Not now, not ever. She closed her eyes, sighing heavily. Just be careful. I kissed her forehead and whispered, always. But deep down, I knew careful wasn't going to cut it. Not anymore. Ethan wasn't just humiliated. He was cornered. And cornered men, no matter how arrogant, always lash out. The difference was, I'd already built the trap. I was right. Cornered men always lash out. By Wednesday, Ethan made his move. Claire texted me at noon, her message short and sharp. We need to talk. He's trying something. When she came home that night, her face told the story before her words did. She dropped her bag by the door, rubbed her temples, and sank into the armchair like someone who'd just come back from battle. What happened? I asked. She let out a bitter laugh. What didn't happen? He went straight to HR this morning. Said you've been harassing him. Said you threatened him at the party. And get this. He claimed you've been digging into his personal life. That lawsuit. He swore up and down you leaked it. I leaned back slowly, letting the words settle. Did they believe him? Not entirely, she admitted. But HR takes complaints seriously, and now they're looking into it. They called me in for questioning. Asked if you had a history of being aggressive. She glanced at me carefully. I defended you, of course. But Ethan's good at playing the victim. He acted shaken, like he was scared of you. I smirked at that. Scared? Good. That means the message landed. Claire frowned. You're not listening. If they start digging too much, if they think you're some kind of liability, it could reflect badly on me. That's what he wants, to drag me down with you. I stood and paced the room, the anger simmering in my chest. Ethan wasn't just reckless, he was desperate now. And desperation made men sloppy. Then it's time I stopped letting him play offense, I said. If he wants to make this a war, then fine. But he doesn't understand. This isn't a game I lose. That night, I sat at my desk long after Claire had gone to bed. I opened my laptop again, revisiting the folder I'd built. Ethan's lawsuit had been a start, but it wasn't the end. I dug deeper, following digital breadcrumbs he probably thought had vanished into the ether. Old social media posts, financial filings, even pictures tagged by acquaintances. And then I struck gold. A photo from 2 years ago, buried in a forgotten Instagram account belonging to one of his old college friends. It showed Ethan at a networking event, drink in hand, arm draped around a woman who was very much not his wife. The caption was harmless enough, wild night, best crew ever, but paired with the image, it painted a very different story. Especially if Ethan had been married at the time. I checked the dates. He had. I sat back, exhaling slowly. It wasn't proof of an affair, but it was leverage. Enough to make him sweat. Enough to make him realize that every time he tried to claw at me, I'd find something sharper to cut him down with. The next morning, I didn't send the photo. Not yet. Instead, I drafted another anonymous email. This one went only to Ethan. No CCs, no blind copies. Just a single line and the attached image. The subject, careful, Ethan. The body, you really don't know who you're dealing with. By lunchtime, Claire texted me again. He looks like a ghost. He can barely concentrate. What did you do? I smiled at the screen but didn't answer. That evening, when Claire came home, she didn't even wait to take her shoes off. You sent him something, didn't you? She accused, standing in the doorway. I met her eyes calmly. I reminded him that pushing me has consequences. She shook her head, torn between fear and relief. He's unraveling. People noticed. He snapped at a coworker today, nearly blew up during a meeting. My boss even pulled me aside and asked if I knew what was going on with him. Good, I said simply. Let him destroy himself. All I have to do is keep nudging. Claire stared at me for a long time, then finally whispered, You scare me sometimes. I walked over, placing my hands gently on her shoulders. Don't be scared of me. Be glad I'm on your side. Because Ethan? He picked the wrong man to provoke. And though she didn't say it, I could see the truth in her eyes. She was beginning to realize Ethan wasn't fighting just another husband. He was fighting someone who knew how to turn every weakness into a weapon. And I wasn't finished. Not even close. By Friday, Ethan was coming apart at the seams. Claire told me he looked pale, distracted, his usual cocky grin replaced with tight lips and darting eyes. He wasn't the golden boy of the office anymore. He was a man unraveling under pressure, and people could see it. But I knew men like Ethan rarely went down quietly. They made one last desperate play, hoping to claw back a shred of dignity before the end. And sure enough, his move came that afternoon. Claire called me the second she left the building. Her voice was shaky. He tried to humiliate you in front of everyone. During a team meeting, he started ranting about how you were dangerous, unstable, that you're obsessed with him. He even suggested I should rethink who I associate with. I chuckled darkly. That's his big strategy? Accuse me of obsession? It wasn't funny, she snapped. It was awful. The room went silent. My boss cut him off and ended the meeting early, but Ethan looked wild, like he was daring someone to challenge him. That was the moment I'd been waiting for. Ethan wasn't calculating anymore. He was reckless, cornered, and loud. The perfect recipe for self-destruction. That evening, I opened my laptop and queued up everything I'd collected. The lawsuit, the Instagram photo, and a few more pieces of dirt I'd uncovered in the last 2 days. Nothing fabricated, just fragments of truth, each one sharp enough to wound. I didn't plan to spread them widely. I didn't need to. I sent them anonymously to one person, Claire's boss. The effect was immediate. The next morning, Claire came downstairs with wide eyes. They suspended him, she said, almost in disbelief. HR called him in first thing. They said there are too many concerns about his behavior, his past. He's out pending review. I leaned back in my chair, sipping coffee like it was any other Saturday morning. I told you, he picked the wrong man. Claire sank into the seat across from me. For the first time in days, she let out a relieved laugh, though it was tinged with nerves. You really did it. You broke him. I met her eyes and spoke evenly. No, Claire. He broke himself. I just handed him the mirror. She went quiet, studying me. Then she whispered, "Sometimes I wonder if you enjoy this too much." Maybe she was right. Maybe a part of me did. But I didn't say that out loud. I just reached for her hand and gave her the same calm reassurance I'd given from the start. Don't worry, I said softly. It's over now. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Men like Ethan didn't just disappear quietly. And even broken men had teeth. I should have known Ethan wouldn't go quietly. Men like him never did. The following week, Claire came home late, her face pale and her hands trembling. She set her bag down carefully, as if every movement weighed 100 pounds. I was already waiting for her at the table. What happened? I asked. Her voice cracked. He showed up in the parking lot. He waited for me after work. My chest tightened. Did he touch you? No, she said quickly, shaking her head. But he cornered me. He said he knew it was you who leaked everything. He swore he'd prove it, that he'd ruin you, ruin us both. He looked unhinged. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about pride anymore. Ethan wasn't just humiliated. He was desperate, broken, and dangerous. If I didn't end it now, he'd drag Claire through hell just to spite me. I spent that night in silence, planning. By dawn, I knew exactly what had to be done. The next day, I arrived at the office building before Ethan. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't about to storm inside. Instead, I waited in the cafe across the street, laptop open, phone ready. Timing was everything. When he finally appeared, striding toward the glass doors like a man marching into battle, I hit send. An email blasted across the company network, anonymous, of course, containing every piece of evidence I had on him. The lawsuit, the photo, financial missteps, even screenshots of crude comments he'd left online under burner accounts years ago. I didn't embellish, didn't exaggerate. I just let the truth speak for itself. From my seat by the window, I watched the fallout unfold like a silent movie. Within an hour, Ethan was summoned to HR again. This time, he didn't come back out. Security escorted him straight through the lobby, his face red, his jaw tight, his coworkers staring as the golden boy was walked out like a criminal. Claire called me that evening, her voice barely above a whisper. He's gone. Fired on the spot. They said his behavior and history left them no choice. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight finally lift. It's over, I said. But Claire was quiet for a long time before answering. You scare me sometimes, she admitted. The way you do these things, the way you always seem 10 steps ahead. It's like you were waiting for someone like him. I didn't deny it. Because deep down, she wasn't wrong. Men like Ethan always show up sooner or later, arrogant, reckless, thinking the world bends to their will. And I'd learned long ago that the only way to deal with them was to strip them down to the truth. That night, as I sat with Claire on the couch, Her head resting against my shoulder, I thought back to Ethan's first smug remark at the party. He thought I was just some husband tagging along, someone easy to mock. But he had no clue who he was dealing with. And now, he never would again.